At my brother's wedding, I was seated at the table for unwanted guests, so I made a speech to the whole room. My name is Caleb, and I'm 31 years old. Single, financially stable, and, as it turns out, invisible to my own family. You wouldn't think so, considering I'm the one who helped pay off my parents' second mortgage, covered my sister's tuition shortfall, and lent my brother $5,000 2 years ago when his startup was floundering. He never paid me back, but I didn't mind. I've done okay for myself, a quiet job in software, a decent apartment, nothing flashy. I've always been the reliable one, the guy who shows up, foots the bill, stays out of drama. I never expected to be celebrated, but I sure didn't expect to be dismissed either. So when my brother Nathan got engaged to Emily, a woman who once described my job as adorably average, I kept my mouth shut. Not because I liked her, I didn't. But because Nathan seemed happy, and I figured maybe if I played nice, she'd eventually stop treating me like I was part of the catering staff. I bought a suit, RSVP'd early, even offered to help out with last-minute wedding logistics. No reply. Not a thank you, not a we've got it handled, just silence. At the time, I chalked it up to wedding stress. The week before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the $2,000 check I'd written as my wedding gift. I handed it to my mom with a smile and a little card I'd written by hand. She barely glanced at it. Emily's parents are covering most of it, she said, waving vaguely at the dining room covered in RSVP cards and half-glued centerpieces. They're a very involved family, very organized. She said it like that was some kind of warning. I should have known better. That tone always meant stay in your lane. The night before the wedding, they had a rehearsal dinner. I wasn't invited. When I asked Nathan about it, he muttered something about keeping it small and mostly wedding party only. I laughed it off, even though my gut twisted a little. I reminded myself it was his wedding, maybe I was being too sensitive. The day of the wedding, I arrived early, wearing the nicest suit I owned. I even brought a small camera to take casual photos. I was really trying to be supportive. The venue was stunning, I'll give them that, a lakeside lodge, sunlight bouncing off the water, strings of white lights hanging from oak beams. But the moment I walked in, I could tell something was off. The usher looked confused when I gave him my name. He flipped through the seating chart twice before he pointed awkwardly toward the far back corner of the reception hall. You're at table 18, I think, he said, avoiding eye contact. I walked over, expecting maybe a quiet table for distant relatives or friends of friends. What I found instead was a rickety folding chair wedged behind a giant wooden column, half hidden from the rest of the room. The chair wobbled when I sat, and to my left, one of the DJ's massive speaker stands. It was like they found the one spot in the entire venue guaranteed to make you feel like an afterthought and assigned it to me on purpose. I stood back up and double-checked the place card. My name, spelled correctly. No mistake. As I glanced around, I spotted some familiar faces. My cousin Josh and his fiancée had a prime table dead center. Nathan's old college roommate, who he hasn't spoken to in years, had a front row view. Even Mr. Benson, Nathan's high school chemistry lab partner, was seated next to the bride's aunt like he was royalty. I took a breath and walked up to the woman overseeing the seating. She wore a headset and carried a clipboard. Before I could speak, she pointed curtly. Back there, she said, not even looking up. I said, actually, I'm just wondering if there's been a mix-up. I'm the groom's brother. That's when Emily's mother, Margaret, walked by and actually stopped to chime in. She gave me a once-over, lips pursed like she'd tasted something sour. Oh, she said sweetly. That was Emily's decision. She said you weren't really part of their side of the family. We wanted the close family up front. I stared at her. I'm his brother. She shrugged, then added with a patronizing little smile, but you're not in the wedding party, are you? I didn't say anything. I just walked back to my chair and sat down, even though my legs were trembling with something halfway between disbelief and rage. I couldn't even see the head table from where I was. When the music started and everyone stood for the bride, I had to lean to the side of the column just to catch a glimpse. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared. During dinner, no one sat at my table. Apparently, it had been reserved for overflow. The other chairs were empty. I spent an hour pretending to look at my phone, trying to keep my composure. But the boiling point hit during the toasts. Nathan's best man told a half-funny story about their college days, something about sneaking into a faculty lounge and almost setting off the fire alarm with a popcorn machine. It got polite laughter. Then Emily's sister took the mic and gushed about how Emily had been dreaming about her wedding since she was 10 years old and how Nathan was the man of her dreams. And then, Emily's father, a tall man with a commanding voice and a practiced tone, stepped up and said, "We're so grateful to have every single person here with us tonight. Each and every guest here was chosen because they mean something deeply to Emily and Nathan. That was the moment. Something in me just snapped, or maybe it didn't snap. Maybe it settled. Like everything fell into place with a quiet click that said, "You've been ignoring this long enough." I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out the card I'd written, the one I tucked the check into. I had signed it with a short note on the memo line, "For your future." I got up. My legs felt steady now, not from confidence, but from clarity. I walked slowly toward the head table. I could see some people glance up, puzzled. One of the groomsmen looked at me, furrowed his brow. I didn't make eye contact with anyone in particular, I just kept moving forward. I reached the microphone. "Hi," I said, offering a small smile. "Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say congratulations to the happy couple." I paused for a second. A few guests gave small, supportive smiles. "Truly. May your marriage last longer than my respect for you." Silence. It wasn't the dramatic kind, no one gasped, no one dropped their glass. It was worse. It was the kind of silence where every person in the room stopped chewing, stopped moving, and just stared. I reached over to the gift table, where the envelope I had placed earlier still sat neatly among the others. I picked it up and slid it into my coat pocket. Then I returned the mic gently to its stand, no dramatic mic drop, just a soft thud, and walked out of the reception hall. I didn't look back. The night air felt crisp against my skin as I walked past the caterers clearing trays, the DJ flipping through song files, and the valet who tried to hand me my parking stub. I walked until I reached my car, got in, and sat there with the door shut and the engine off. I could see guests inside still chatting, oblivious to what had just happened, or maybe too stunned to know how to respond. Some faces turned toward the windows. Others started whispering across their tables. Good. Let them wonder. My phone buzzed not long after I pulled out of the lot. It was Nathan. His name flashed on the screen, and I let it ring out. Then the text started. "Nathan, what was that? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. We need to talk now." Then. "Emily, that was unbelievably rude. This was supposed to be our day. I always knew you resented us. I see it now. You owe Nathan an apology." I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat without reading the rest. I wasn't going to respond. At least not then. That night, I checked into a quiet hotel just outside town. I didn't want to go back to my apartment, back to my usual routines, not yet. I needed time to sit with what had just happened and what had been happening for years. I lay on the unfamiliar bed, the air conditioning hummed soft and even. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the holidays I spent helping wash dishes in the background while Nathan told stories and got all the credit. I thought about the graduation party where I covered the cost of decorations and snacks, and no one remembered to mention me in the speeches. I thought about the group texts where everyone joked about how reliable I was, like it was some default setting, not something that cost me. I wasn't just upset about the wedding. I was grieving the realization that I had let this go on far too long. The next morning, I returned to my apartment to shower and change clothes. I made coffee and sat by the window. The sky was overcast, and for once, I was grateful for it. It matched my mood, reflective, unsettled, but still moving. That's when the family group text started buzzing. It was my Aunt June first. "Aunt June, Caleb, I just heard what happened. Are you all right?" Then my cousin Rachel. "Rachel, hey. I didn't know you were there. I didn't even see you. Where were you sitting?" And then the dominoes started to fall. Multiple cousins messaged me privately, telling me they were confused about the seating and thought I had maybe declined the invitation. One of them said she'd asked to sit near me, but the planner told her the table was pre-assigned for distant guests. The most surprising message came from my cousin Mike. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He wrote, "Mike, I always thought it was weird how Emily talked about you. Like you were just some guy on the sidelines. I'm sorry, man. That wasn't okay." A few hours later, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her tone was firm, strained. "Caleb, I don't know what's gotten into you, but your little outburst ruined the reception. Nathan and Emily are devastated. Call me back. Immediately." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed my keys and took a long walk downtown. I got a coffee, sat near the river, and let myself breathe. I tried to remember that I wasn't the unreasonable one here, that what had happened wasn't just a social error. It was a message, clear as day: you're not part of this family the way you think you are. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But I knew now that pretending otherwise was just delaying the healing. That evening, I checked Facebook. Wedding photos had started to appear, bright, polished, full of smiles. Emily's makeup flawless, Nathan's bow tie straight, their arms wrapped around people who had front row seats while I sat behind a column next to a speaker. And in all the group shots, I was nowhere to be seen. Then the comments began trickling in. Where's Caleb? Did he leave early? I thought I saw him in the back. Did he give a speech? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The silence surrounding my absence spoke louder than anything I could have said in a post. I didn't respond to the Facebook comments. I didn't message anyone back right away. I didn't even open most of the notifications. But I read them. One after another, people started piecing it together. A friend of the groom posted something lighthearted. Did anyone catch that Mystery Mike moment last night? What a plot twist. Someone replied, wasn't that the brother? I thought he was giving a toast. And then came the quieter voices, people from extended family, church, and a few old classmates who'd seen the photos and realized I was missing. I didn't see Caleb in the wedding party at all. Was he even invited? That one stung. I was there. I showed up early. I wore the suit. I handed my mother a handwritten card with a $2,000 check. I brought a camera to take candid photos, thinking I might help fill in the gaps where the photographer couldn't. I even offered to assist with setup. But when you're treated like a stranger, it doesn't matter how many boxes you check. You're still standing outside the circle. It had become clear to me that this wasn't just about a poorly placed chair or an overlooked invitation to the rehearsal dinner. It was about how easily people could erase someone they didn't think mattered. And I was tired of being erased. So, after 2 days of silence, I decided to say something not out of bitterness, but because I needed the record corrected. I wasn't going to let others define what happened while I sat quietly. I opened the family group chat, the one filled with old photos, occasional birthday wishes, and long-forgotten plans for reunions that never happened. I typed slowly, carefully. Hey everyone, I just wanted to clear the air about the wedding before more assumptions spread. I was invited. I showed up early, dressed appropriately, and gave a gift. I was seated behind a column next to a speaker, alone, at a table that was never filled. When I asked if there had been a mistake, I was told by Emily's mother that I wasn't really part of their side of the family. So, I left. With my gift. I just wanted everyone to hear it from me, not in whispers or half-truths. I attached a photo I had taken of the place card with my name on it, Caleb, table 18, slightly off-center on a tablecloth tucked next to a towering black speaker stand. I didn't add sarcasm. I didn't blame. I just laid out the facts. What happened next was faster than I expected. Within 10 minutes, the chat lit up. Aunt June, what? I thought you weren't invited. Uncle Ron, that's appalling. You're Nathan's brother, for goodness sake. Cousin Liz, I sat next to Nathan's college roommate, and I was told you had opted out. This is so wrong. Then came a message from someone I barely knew, one of Emily's distant cousins, I think. She messaged me privately. I'm so sorry. I was there. I helped with seating cards. Emily told the planner she wanted clean tables for photos. I didn't understand at the time, but now I do. That phrase stuck with me, clean tables for photos. Apparently, I didn't match the aesthetic. I was the family member that didn't make the curated version of the celebration. As I sat with that realization, another message came in, this time from my mom. Caleb, that was incredibly hurtful. We don't air family matters in public. This should have been handled privately. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I replied. Didn't seem to bother anyone when I was humiliated in front of 120 guests. She didn't respond. But others did. Friends of mine, people I hadn't spoken to in a while, started reaching out. Some sent kind messages. Some apologized for not noticing. Some told me their own stories of being treated like a footnote in their own families. One message stood out. You were the only person who showed up early to help set up chairs. I remember because I thought it was really kind of you to offer help when no one else did. I hadn't even remembered doing that. When you're used to being the one who steps up, you don't tally the score. You just do it. But apparently, others had noticed. That was when I realized something else. Emily's father, Mr. Bennett, was involved with a company I had been in contract talks with for a freelance development role. It wasn't anything major, just a small gig I was interested in to pad my savings. A week after the wedding, I received an email forwarded by mistake from someone at their firm. The subject line? Do not move forward with Caleb. Too much drama. That was it. No follow-up. No clarification. Just a quiet effort to make sure the consequences of standing up for myself extended beyond the wedding venue. I wasn't even angry at that point. Just disappointed. They weren't content with simply excluding me. They wanted to make sure I stayed in the margins, professionally, socially, emotionally. And all for what? For asking to be treated like I mattered? That evening, I sat at my desk. I still had the original card I had written, the one with the check. The check had been voided, of course, but the card was still neatly folded. Inside, I had written, "Wishing you a love that lifts each other higher, the way family should." I stared at it for a long time, then took a picture of it. And I made a choice. I posted the photo on my profile, no tags, no names, just the card and a simple caption. This was what I gave before I was seated behind a column next to a speaker. Before I was told I wasn't really part of the family. Before I was called rude for walking away quietly. I've spent years supporting people who barely saw me. This time, I chose to see myself. If that makes me the problem, so be it. I hit post and closed the laptop. I wasn't trying to create waves. I was just done pretending I was okay being ignored. Within hours, the post became the most shared thing I'd ever uploaded. Friends, colleagues, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years left comments like, "This hit home. Thank you for putting words to something I've felt for years. I see you, Caleb." And then, late that night, my phone buzzed one more time. "Nathan, are you really done with all of us?" And for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate when I typed, "No, Nathan. I'm just done being invisible." After I sent that last message to Nathan, things went quiet. No more texts. No phone calls. No surprise knocks on my door. It felt like the air had finally settled after weeks of invisible pressure. I wasn't sure what to expect, maybe more guilt, maybe more silence. Instead, it was something in between. A few days later, I heard from my cousin Jenna. She was the first one to mention what Easter brunch was like back at my parents' place. No Emily. No Margaret. And Nathan, she said, looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Everyone noticed the shift. The room was quieter, conversations more careful, as if they were walking around something broken on the floor that no one wanted to clean up. While they sat around a chipped dining table, trying to ignore what was missing, I was sitting at a quiet gate in an international terminal. I had used the $2,000, the same amount I once handed over as a wedding gift, to book a solo trip to Japan. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my closest friends. I just went. In Kyoto, I walked alleys so narrow I could touch both sides with outstretched arms. I sat in tiny cafes with wooden counters and ordered dishes I couldn't pronounce. I drank matcha that tasted like the earth and watched cherry blossoms fall like snow. There was no schedule, no to-do list, just me. On one morning, I climbed the path through the Fushimi Inari Shrine, red gates stretching endlessly over stone steps. The forest was silent except for the distant call of crows. It was the first time in years I felt like my breathing matched the world around me. In that silence, I finally stopped replaying conversations that had already happened. I stopped imagining the ones that never would. I didn't need closure. I needed space, and for the first time, I had taken it without asking permission. The only message I received from home during that trip came from my mother. A group text with a blurry photo of my niece holding a pastel Easter egg, and the caption, "We missed you today." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't love my niece, but because I understood what the message really meant. It wasn't "we missed you." It was "we missed what you used to do for us." We missed the one who didn't speak up. The one who wrote checks and stayed quiet. The one who smiled through seating charts and lopsided loyalty. That person, the one who was always reachable, always agreeable, was no longer available. When I returned from Japan, my apartment felt different. Cleaner. Still. Mine. I began changing things slowly, not out of spite, but out of intention. I donated the old couch my parents gave me when I first moved out. The one my father said should be good enough. I replaced it with one I picked out myself, a dark velvet piece, soft and strange and dramatic. Maybe it was too big for the space. Maybe it didn't match anything else. But it was mine. Work picked up. I said yes to new clients, new collaborations. And I started reconnecting with people I had unintentionally drifted from, friends I had once been too busy to meet for coffee, too distracted to ask how they were doing. Turns out, when you stop bending over backwards for people who don't value you, you realize how many others were just waiting for you to turn around and notice them. But peace doesn't stay uninterrupted forever. One Saturday morning, I heard a knock. I looked through the peephole. It was my mother. She was standing on the mat with a Tupperware container, lemon bars, if I had to guess. They were my favorite as a kid. She stood there in her coat, shifting the container in her hands like it was an olive branch. I didn't open the door. She knocked again. Lightly. "Caleb," she called out. "Are you home?" I didn't answer. I stood behind the door, watching as she lingered for another minute. Then, slowly, she set the container down, straightened her coat, and walked away. I threw the lemon bars out later that afternoon. A week passed. Then another knock. This time, no visitor, just a letter in the mailbox, sealed carefully and written in my father's unmistakable, upright handwriting. Inside, on thick paper, it read, "Son, your mother is very upset. We feel this rift has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Let's move on. Nathan and Emily are trying to get back to normal, and you should too. No family is perfect. Let's have dinner next Sunday and talk. You're still our son. We still love you." I read it once. Then again. It said all the right things except the most important one. It never said, "We're sorry." It never said, "We see now how we let this happen." It never said, "You didn't deserve that." It was a peace offering made of guilt, not accountability. So I wrote back. I bought the same kind of envelope. The same type of paper. And I wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm glad you love me. But love without respect is just control. You raised me to value family, but somewhere along the way, family began to mean the people I was expected to tolerate, no matter how they treated me. I showed up for all of you for years. Quietly. Consistently. When I asked for nothing, you assumed I needed nothing. But the moment I spoke up, you acted like I broke something. I didn't break it. I stopped pretending it wasn't broken. You don't miss me, you miss the version of me who didn't set boundaries. That person isn't here anymore. I'm not coming to dinner. Not yet. When you're ready to talk with honesty, with accountability, I'll listen. But until then, please stop knocking and expecting the past to answer. Caleb. I mailed it the next morning. No dramatic follow-up. No Facebook post. No cryptic status update. Just a simple return envelope, sealed with the truth. I don't know how they reacted. I don't know if they cried, or got angry, or sat in silence after reading it. They never replied. But in that silence, there was finally something that felt close to an apology. As for Nathan and Emily? Jenna told me they've had a rough time. Word is Emily's been pushing Nathan to distance himself from toxic influences. In her world, that means anyone who doesn't fall in line. Apparently, Nathan resisted. Maybe he finally saw the difference between someone who disagreed with her and someone who was disloyal. The last time I saw Nathan was unplanned. A chance encounter at a cafe, mid-morning on a Thursday. We made eye contact. He gave a small nod. I nodded back. That was it. No speech. No confrontation. Just two brothers pretending the air between them was empty. And you know what? That was enough for me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for his approval. I had already given it to myself. Now I sit here on a couch I chose, in an apartment that feels like mine, not borrowed, not temporary. Just mine. I don't know what comes next. Maybe they'll knock again someday. Maybe they'll come with something real. And if they do, I'll listen. But I'm not waiting by the door anymore. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.